Welcome back to the Pauper Cube Top 10 series. We're going to do something a little bit different for the multicolor section. I'm going to be discussing what I believe are the top 3 cards in each color pair. I think that'll make for a bit more interesting of a video, and I will exclude signets and bounce lands, as those would make up half of the top list. These are my top 3 picks for Azorius in no particular order, starting with Curse of Chains, originally from Shadowmoor, 1, and then a hybrid white or blue mana enchant creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, tap enchanted creature. So this is essentially just another pacifism variant. But the kicker here is that white decks and blue decks can both play this. Now that's not as impressive for white, who has access to infinite amounts of the same effect, but blue, while it has been getting more similar effects that are actually almost on par with white lately, Curse of Chains in my mind does stand above those, and the flexibility this offers for both colors makes it one of the best Azorius picks in my mind. My next pick is Death Duelist from Shards of Alara, white and blue, 2/1 first strike and shroud. Now at first glance this may not look that impressive, but I can assure you this is a very difficult card to deal with. You can't remove it with spells or pingers because of Shroud, and it's difficult to kill in combat with a lot of Pauper's creatures because of the first strike. You can play this as a blocker in control decks, and it's even better as an aggressive creature in tempo oriented builds. How high you rate this card really depends on your cube environment, but if you're like me and playing multiple hexproof creatures and build around enchantments along with signets and pacifism effects, I do think that disenchants are very much main deckable. This is arguably the best disenchant effect in Pauper Cube. Dismantling Blow, originally from Invasion, 2 in white, kicker 2 in blue. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. If you pay the kicker cost, draw 2 cards. The flexibility to play this as an overcosted disenchant when you need it. There's times you may need to actually kill a Bone Splitter or an artifact creature early. However, if you actually cast this for 6 mana, it's a 3-for-1. And moving on to Dimir, and starting with Denrove Horror from Gatecrash, 4 blue-black 4/4. When Denrove Horror enters the battlefield, return target permanent to its owner's hand, then that player discards a card. This is arguably one of the best control finishers you can be running. It interacts well with blink effects, nullifies opposing pacifisms, and is one of the best creatures overall. You get a lot of bang for your buck with this creature. Next I have Agony Warp from Shards of Alara, blue-black, instant. Target creature gets -3/-0 until end of turn. Target creature gets -0/-3 until end of turn. So you can play this as a removal spell, kind of basically a last gasp, but it's better than that because you can actually use it as a combat trick as well. You can get easy 2-for-1s a lot of the times with Agony Warp, and on top of that, along with a lot of other multicolor removal, it's very important to have a lot of outs to Guardian of the Guildpact if you choose to run that in your cube. So for me, any multicolored removal that can actually remove Guardian of the Guildpact gets a nod. My last choice for best card for Dimir is Probe from Invasion, 2 in a blue, it's a sorcery, kicker 1 in black, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand. If you paid the kicker cost, target opponent discards 2 cards from his or her hand. So just on the surface level, this is just bad card filtering that you're overpaying for. However, if you're playing this in a mid-range or control mirror, and you can actually cast it for 5 mana, it will provide so much card quality and card advantage that it can propel you to winning the game almost on its own. My first pick for best Rakdos cards, Terminate from Plane Shift, plus black and red, instant, destroy target creature, it cannot be regenerated. Very clean and very powerful. Now, black and red don't have a shortage of removal, but this can remove basically anything in the cube. It's not restricted to color, size, or anything like that. If you're playing Rakdos, you're probably always open to more removal, and this is among the most efficient in the cube. My next Rakdos card, another removal spell, Strangling Soot from Time Spiral, 2 in a black, instant, destroy target creature with toughness 3 or less, flashback 5 in red. Now, this doesn't kill everything in the cube, notably mostly green creatures, but it does kill a lot, and cube, at least my cube, is mostly dominated by small evasive creatures and tokens. So this will almost always find a target regardless of what kind of deck your opponent's playing, and if you have enough time, it's a 2-for-1. The biggest problem with Strangling Soot is a multicolored removal spell. It does not remove Guardian of the Guild Pact, which is a huge deal. However, more often than not, this is also a great splash to have in your green-black or blue-black mid-range decks, along with Fireball. I'm pretty confident with my first 2 picks for Rakdos, but the third one, that's more open to debate. There's not really a third great card that stands above the other options for the color. My pick, however, would be Lightning from Shards of Alara. You're probably familiar with it. It's 1 black-red sorcery. Lightning deals 3 damage to target player. That player discards 2 cards. This is decent value for mana. However, I think that a lot of people think this card's better than it really is. It's a Mind Rot with a Lava Spike on it. It doesn't really have a home in any particular deck. It is, however, a fine card to include. I don't know that it's a solid third pick for Rakdos. Rakdos is one of those color combinations that doesn't really have a deep sea of options like some colors do. My top cards for Gruul starts with Curd Ape from Arabian Nights. Single red mana, Curd Ape gets +1/+2 if you have any forests in play, and it's a 1/1. So the stats on this are just crazy if you're playing it in red and green. A 1-drop is a 2/3 and Pauper is pretty much unheard of, and this is pretty easy to trigger. I mean, you just play some forests in your deck, right? There isn't really anything else to say about Curd Ape other than the rate is just really good, and it's a really good Gruul 1-drop in a format that can always use better 1-drops. My next pick for Gruul, Branching Bolt from Shards of Alara. 1 red-green instant, choose one or both. Branching Bolt deals 3 damage to target creature with flying, or Branching Bolt deals 3 damage to target creature without flying. Now, of course, this gets a nod from me for being able to efficiently handle Guardian of the Guild Pact. And green's biggest problem in Pauper Cube is flying creatures. Now, it's been getting a lot of efficient reach creatures, but that being said, you can always use more removal and outs to dealing with them. A lot of times, this is just going to be a 1-for-1, but it's a removal spell, and this is limited. Removal spells are only so bad, and at least a decent amount of the times you can get a 2-for-1 in matchups that you really need a 2-for-1. Now, this doesn't go to the face, and that is a problem, so I do prefer this in more mid-rangey green-red decks, but it's also a fine option for aggressive decks. My next pick for Gruul, Burning Tree Emissary. Costs 2 red and green hybrid mana. It's a 2/2. When Burning Tree Emissary enters the battlefield, add red-green to your mana pool. So if you're playing aggressive decks and you have several 2-drops, this is essentially a free 2/2 that can get you very much ahead on tempo. Now, I am a fan of Burning Tree Emissary, however, it's pretty restrictive in what decks it can go in my opinion. I considered putting Manamorphose in this spot instead because it's a free cantrip and can fix your mana. It can go into more decks than Burning Tree Emissary. The kicker for Burning Tree Emissary on this list is that when Burning Tree Emissary is in a deck that can utilize it to its full potential, it can open up very aggressive and blistering starts, whereas Manamorphose, it's just always an okay card. Starting my Selesnya section off with an old favorite, Armadillo Cloak from Invasion. 1 in green and white, it's a creature enchantment. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has trample and lifelink. This can definitely cause you card disadvantage because whatever you're going to put this on is going to be a magnet for any kind of removal your opponent has. That being said, if your opponent does not remove it on the spot, it's going to cause a huge life swing, and if this gets in a couple of attacks, the game is as good as over. You can play this in aggressive decks, but it kind of is more of an all-in strategy that I'm usually comfortable for. I like to play it in hexproof decks on even Fleetwing, Primal Hut Beast, efficient hexproof bodies that aren't easily dealt with. My next pick for Selesnya, Qasali Pridemage from Alara Reborn. Green and white, 2/2 Exalted. 1 sacrifice Qasali Pridemage, destroy target artifact or enchantment. This is one of the best disenchant options in Pauper Cube, and I do love running disenchants in my cube because I think having disenchant effects that are main deckable in Pauper Cube are important, especially if you're going to run signets and hexproof, and this is one of the best options there is. It's always live even if it doesn't have a target. It works well in aggressive decks, it's playable in mid-range decks, and it works well with recursion. My last pick for Selesnya, Travel Preparations from Innistrad. It's a 1 in green sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Flashback, 1 in white. As long as you have bodies to put the counters on, this is a very powerful card for the cost you're paying. And in Pauper Cube, you're going to have tokens, you're going to have hexproof creatures. If you've ever played in Innistrad Limited, then you understand how powerful travel preparations can be, and it doesn't take a lot of work to get there. Those are my top 3 picks for each allied color in Pauper Cube. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll be back next time with the enemy colors.